Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Um, every Wednesday, people ask me questions, and I do my best to try to answer them. I got some pretty great questions, a lot of questions this week, so I got to go through it. Let's get into it. First, it comes from K. Munin, who wrote, "Are there comics that are not worth much now, but you feel in the future will gain massive increase in value?" Yes, a bunch. So obviously I collect a lot of Golden Age stuff. With the Golden Age, there's a bunch that are kind of in that, not necessarily worthless, but very low value. And those would be like Captain Marvel and things like Western comics, certain books that you think actually should have value, but really don't. Um, and that would be one answer from the Golden Age collector perspective. But I'm going to actually give you an answer that is a little bit different than that. That will actually give you a sense of the future and the future's future, if that makes sense. Way back when I was collecting comics in the 90s, I was talking to this dealer. He was a bit of a jerk, actually. He was a bit of a jerk, but he was a very honest jerk. And he was saying, like, I asked him, like, which books he collected or which ones he was interested in. And he gave me the following advice that I'm going to give to you. He was saying XMen, that in the future, XMen is going to be worth a lot more than it was worth at that time. And the reason he said XMen was the people that collected XMen in the 90s, once they get older, they will collect X-Men. They will want to go back. They will be nostalgic for those X-Men books. And really, that is kind of true. What happened is the movies later came out. There's more X-Men movies coming out now, even in the next couple of years. And people will be nostalgic to, to those books, and then they'll try to pick them up. And you'll see a rise in the value. X-Men books are worth a lot more now than they were worth in the early 90s. So you get kind of these phases where people will be nostalgic for their childhood. And usually what you want to have is a book, like if you want to predict like what's going to be the next hot book in the next 10 years, let's say 10-year time. What you do is you take 10 years and you minus 30 from it. So go back 20 years. And the reason you do that is basically that you want to find childhood books that people would have collected or been interested in, or shows that they were interested in, movies that they were interested in when they were in that 10 to 20-year-old phase. Because most people are nostalgic to that age demographic of their own lives. So if I think about my childhood, what were the big things for me? Like Ghostbusters, Star Wars, those kind of things were really, really big for me. So I will go back to collecting those things. I'll try to find those things. Also, like Richie Rich, Uncle Scrooge, those are kind of nostalgic to me. So those are the books that I'll generally try to pick up now, being nostalgic for my own childhood. So if you think about what are kids like, what is the stuff that's happening in the world today that people would be nostalgic to, it would be maybe Star Wars. Maybe it would be certain things. Like my son, he was a big watcher of The Simpsons. So I figured, hey, I'll show The Simpsons. So this is an example of a book. I think, you can pick this up for like less than $100. And this is the first appearance of The Simpsons in comics. And it's one that, you can pick it up and probably in 20 years, it'll be worth something, or worth much more than it is worth now. Another one that I was thinking about, and this is more like spec in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I would say even, are things like Street Fighter. The popular games of this is kind of popular now. This is more of a current spec actually, because people played this game when they were, with their first consoles, and they were just keen about it. So, there's going to be it's kind of that nostalgic feeling about it. Another one is the rise of anime. But, nowadays, like, anime is really, really popular. And I think of things like Dragon Ball. This is like the first Dragon Ball. You get people kind of being keen on Dragon Ball, and it could be something that would be popular in the future. But the idea is, what you try to do is think about what was the big thing within a certain time frame, like a 5-year time frame. What were the big popular movies, TV shows, or things that people did? And then you sort of project out like 20 years from now, or so that those people are old enough that they have the money, and then they get nostalgic about their childhood. That's the philosophy behind it. I hope that all made sense. So those are some examples of books that I thought were kind of good. But there's probably a lot more. It's really, you can do kind of a quick search on things like what was popular in the year 2000, and then see what kind of things were popular back then, and then buy comics that would have been cool to those kids back then. And they probably have gone up in value. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So I hope that helps. And I think there will be a massive increase, and you'll see it'll be like one of those things it'll be like the interesting thing is, though you think, oh, that nostalgia is only going to last a few years, well, I'll be collecting for the next 20 years at least. So that nostalgic phase actually lasts, not just, it'll start off maybe at that point that I mentioned, but it'll actually continue on for about 20 years after that. So you get a whole generation that you can really sell to if you buy into those nostalgic books. So just something to consider. Okay, next question comes from Raymond Noah. To grade or not to grade Golden Age comics? Give reasons. Okay, so Golden Age comics, the reason I'd recommend grading Golden Age comics especially is they are the ones that are the most likely to have damage due to age, and anything you can do to reduce that potential damage in the future is important. Slabbing does protect the books for the most part. They will put in the special paper to reduce acid from the pages of the paper, but having it in that kind of air-sealed environment does protect the books and will increase their longevity. So definitely slabbing older books makes sense. Also, when books are slabbed, especially from the Golden Age, you know everything about the book. That's one thing that you're trusting these grading companies to do, is to tell you, is the book complete? Is there restoration? What has happened to this book, basically? And having all that information really does make the book a little bit more sellable, and it gives you a better sense of what you've actually bought. So those are the biggest reasons. Also, I like to display. I'll always use that as a reason, because I do prefer books in slabs just so I can display them. So definitely those would be my biggest reasons. Okay. Adrift asked, were you an early reader? Did comics or comic strips help you to read when you were younger? Do your children read comics? Okay, so was I an early reader? No, I was a very late reader. I was dyslexic, and I'm still dyslexic. If you haven't noticed, half the time I'm stumbling and making crazy mistakes. So I was very dyslexic as a kid and had real problems reading, actually. My parents were really worried about me that way. And that's one of the reasons why they did buy me comics. And that was one of the reasons why they would buy me anything. Anything like I showed interest in reading, they would buy. So I would buy a lot of Choose Your Own Adventures and a Mad magazine, Mad comics, and Mad books. And what else did I buy? What else would they let me buy? I should say. Yeah, there was like a bunch of things. Generally, though, when I was very young, like let's say up till about 10 or so, I wouldn't actually read. To tell you the truth, I would just look at the pictures and try to figure out the stories. So, there was that kind of real difficulty that I had with reading. So, yes, comic strips and comic books did help me a lot, and I did enjoy reading it. Actually, comic strips were better for me in terms of learning to read because there was just a hint of text, and that hint of text would make me want to read it. When there was a lot of text on a page, I actually got more and more fearful of it, and I wouldn't generally read it. Comic strips were nice that way because there's only a little bit of text, and it wasn't as overwhelming for me. So I actually liked that better. Do my kids read? My kids are actually good readers, so that's one good thing. My son, he would actually read Swamp Thing, and he actually liked comics when he was younger. He thinks that they're not cool right now because he's in that teenage phase where anything daddy does is not cool. And that's really where he is right now. So I hope that he gets back into comics later. So hope that answers your question. I like what I buy. Can you give us some history on Spotlight Comics, please? Okay, so Spotlight Comics, if it's the one I'm thinking you're referring to, it's the series that was from 1944 to 1945, ran only 3 issues. The key character in it was the Black Dwarf, and the Black Dwarf was this kind of football player guy, who basically wanted to fight crime. he basically threw on a monk's robe, and he wore this big fedora hat, and he would fight crime with. He had 2 guns. Basically, he'd just go around shooting all the bad guys, that was it. He had no superpowers or anything, but he was good with his guns. The cover art for the 1 through 3 was done by Paul Gattuso, and he was basically a really great artist. I really like Spotlight Comics number 2. It's like a full cover of the Black Dwarf, and Black Dwarf makes his first appearance in, I believe, Red Seal. I forget what issue number it is. It's the one where the girl's on the table and he's kind of flying in. It's a very classic cover. It's even been homaged. It's a very classic cover. That's all I know about Spotlight Comics. I actually been trying to get the issue number 2 because it is that classic Black Dwarf cover. But every time I've tried, I can think of at least 5 auctions where I lost on it. It seems to come up enough, but I never seem to win on it. So I don't know. It feels like I'm cursed with that book. So I have none in my collection. I have no Spotlight Comics in my collection. But it is one that I'd love to own. AJ Guez wrote, it seems like the Silver Age through the modern comics have been slowly sliding or stagnating in value, correcting for the boom. My perception is that the Golden Age comics are, as a group, going up in value. What are the nuances in the Golden Age market that are driving the differences? Okay, well, there's a couple things to understand. The boom really was a boom of Silver Age to modern. Golden Age really didn't do that much during the boom, except for certain segments of the Golden Age market, which were like pre-code horror and some Good Girl, and some like I think of the Famous Funnies. That like run of Fazetta covers also kind of went up during the boom, and some of these EC books went up during the boom. What you have is a correction. Like the boom was like overly, like you got to really understand the boom, because what you have is just a perfect storm of things that happened where people were getting the stimulus money. They, whenever you give money for what seems for free, even though it's really to support people when they're out of work and like can't do much, even in those weird circumstances, people don't treat it as the way that they treat money that they've worked hard to earn. It's a weird thing. It's a true thing. Whether you accept it or not, it just is what it is. People don't treat the money the same way, and because they see this is free money, basically, is the way they think of it mentally. They are more likely to use it on luxury items. So during the boom, there was a boom in luxury items. You saw Louis Vuitton actually made a killing during COVID. All these luxury brands made massive amounts of money. And comics were another luxury that went up massively. Another thing that happened during the boom is people were kind of not able to do much at home and were buying because they had extra money that they would have normally spent on going out or doing things. So they had extra money that way as well. So there's these two factors where people had extra money, and they also felt like maybe the world's going to end. Might as well get that cool thing I really always wanted. So there's like a bit of all of that, and you had also other people entering the market that were not normally comic buyers. Like a lot of the sports card people entered the market. A whole bunch of new collectors came into the market, and then also you had this weird boom from that would have happened regardless of COVID. From the MCU. The MCU was hot until they made it not hot. But it was hot, and it brought a lot of collectors back into the community. Like 2018 up to 2022 really was like the golden age of comics in a way. It was like a new golden age. So you got all those factors, okay? And it really drove the prices up. Now, because all those factors quickly shifted, where all of a sudden people were, the stimulus had dried up, people were back at work, but not making as much money. There was massive inflation. You get all these kind of weird factors happening, where it's the opposite of the boom era. What generally happens is people want to move their money where it's best protected, right? So what happened was people moved their money from things that were dramatically, during the boom, they were literally going up every week, just crazily going up. So when people see that massive decline in price, where it's really just correcting back to the norm, they then think, okay, well, where is the market stable? Where can I put my money where it's safe? And golden age is kind of considered like stable stocks. It's like the stock market. People, when like things go boom bust in the stock market, you'll see a quick shift. Every time there's a boom bust, you'll see this quick shift from kind of the more speculative stocks to the more blue chip stable stocks. And it's the same thing in comics. Like, you see people shift their money from the more modern and stuff like that, where it's kind of all over the place, to things that are more stable. Golden age is very stable. It's kind of boring in a lot of ways, that it's very stable. It's slow and steady. It's a very tortoise-like thing. So it's a much safer place to put your money in a way. That's the perception of it. So that's kind of what's happening with the golden age. Now, the golden age is not actually performing that well as you might think. There are weaknesses I see in the golden age, and it's where there was the boom element. So EC books have kind of faded a little bit. They're again a little bit of price correction that I see. The good thing was actually, in a lot of ways, the golden age books were so undervalued, underappreciated for a long time actually. That even with the boom, they were more or less getting back to where they should be. But a lot of the EC pre-code horror books that were kind of overly hyped have sort of come down a little bit. They're correcting a little bit as what I'm seeing. Some of the good girl artists as well, like Matt Baker, I find his stuff is actually kind of slowing down a bit. Still, you get some crazy prices. I can't, there's still some crazy prices. They're still going to be valuable, but I've seen those kind of stabilize a bit more. Those are the nuances in the market, really. The other thing that you'll find in the golden age, where you'll feel like, oh, you'll get this weird perception that things are kind of going up, is the weird thing is when people have shifted their money to the golden age, and that has happened. Like, there has been this weird shift. And then you also have the situation where golden age collectors are desperate to get money because of whatever financial situations they're in. What you'll see is like comics that you don't normally see come to market. And what happens is there's always that weird price correction where you might not have seen this book for 10 years. All of a sudden it's on the market and you go, oh, wow. Okay, so somebody will sell it for like 3-4 times what it had sold for in the past. Well, that's really just them realizing that the natural increase that they would have expected with that comic. So that gives kind of this weird perception that things are dramatically going up when they're really just at that further point along the natural curve that this, or natural trend lines that these comics have. But you just don't see all those other points that should have been there. But if it was a more available comic, if you only see it once every 10 years and you see, well, it was $100 then, now it's $300, and you're like, oh wow, it's spiking in value. Well, that's 10 years. Whereas a modern comic, sure, it might have done the same exact thing, but you see like all the price points along the way, so it seems much more natural. Whereas in the golden age, you might see it kind of exaggerated out in terms of the timeline, but really it's really the same growth. So that can kind of give this weird perception that, oh, it's spiking in value, but it's just naturally going up. So those are some of the nuances. There's a lot more to it, actually. I could do a whole video on just that question. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. I'm actually thinking about it. But I hope that helps. RWC wrote, what comics do you feel historical are best, or historically are best for finding? Oh, what cons? Okay, sorry. I can't even read my own handwriting. It's so annoying. Okay, my handwriting is terrible. I'm truly a son of a doctor. What cons, like comic conventions, do you feel historically are best for finding golden age comics? Okay, so pretty much any of the big cons, like San Diego, Toronto Fan Expo, New York Comic Con, whatever, there's like so many of them, will have good golden age comics available, because generally the big cons will bring out the biggest dealers, and the biggest dealers always will showcase golden age somewhere. So yeah, you'll see a lot of that. Now there's another con called the Summit Con, where you get really the elite comics being brought together. They just had it recently, and these are where you get the really elite buyers and sellers all together, and some of the biggest deals will happen at that one. So I think that's almost like, it's like a con that's, I'm not even sure how open it is to the public. I think it's more like invite only kind of situation. But yeah, that's the big one that I can think of. Okay, Hazu wrote, what do you think about one per store comics? Can you show any that you might have? I actually have a few in my collection, but I don't have a clue where they are and which ones are the one per store ones, except for one. I know this one book is a one per store exclusive, and it's this one, my Popeye one that I showed recently. I just recently picked this up. So these kind of things are interesting for multiple reasons. So these ones, they would only give one to the store. So a couple things instantly, they're rare. They're rare. So there's about 2,000 to 3,000 comic shops in North America. But just because there's that many comic shops doesn't mean that there's that many actual comics for the one in store comic versions. Because generally the stores have to order a certain number of the comics to even get the right to get the one per store comic exclusives. So generally you'll see that they have print runs of anywhere from 500 to maybe 1,000, like that kind of range, I would say. Like I think this one probably has a print run of maybe like a few hundred. That's probably it. So they're very rare. Now that can be major. So if it's a situation where it's a key appearance or a cool cover, those things, that rarity can make it very desirable. And I think that is something that is something where those will be big books in the future. Very, very good opportunity if you can ever pick one up. They're one of those things that even when they come out, and even if they're not even a key book and whatever, or don't even have a cool cover, a lot of comic shops will already have people where they put dibs on them, where there's people that find out about these one per store exclusives, and they say, hey, I'm friends with the owner of the shop, and I'm gonna get the special incentive, whatever retail one per store thing, and so you get that situation where there'll be like 4 or 5 people that will be competing for that book day one. So generally they're hard to find, but if you can find them, they probably have pretty good value. Generally they're harder to get. Like it's one of those things that you almost have to. There's a bit of luck with it. If you can find them in the wild, good on you. But they're one of those things that by the time that they hit like eBay, the value's already baked in. So it's it's going to be hard to really make much more than that, because generally what's going to happen is the comic stores will generally sell them at like $50 to $100. They'll sell them at a higher value, and then by the time that they get to sort of like an eBay or secondary seller kind of level, they're already going to be maybe even double that now. And whether even though they're rare and all that kind of stuff, it might take a while for the market to actually get up to that point again, to really make it where you get to see that full value. So it's one of those things, you have to be lucky. If you can get it for cover, wow, then you're then you're really good. But you have to be really careful. Find ones that are cool covers and cool first appearances, and hopefully get it at a good price. But that's going to be the challenge. That's the challenge, getting it at a good price. Because, as I said, it's not like certain books where, they're dollar bins today, but then the next day they're $100 books. With the one in store things, it's more like people already know. It's already like exclusive enough that people are already gunning for them. So, it's hard. Okay, next question comes from Mark Webb. Have you checked out the revival of EC Comics yet? Yes, I have. Where did I put it? So I'm actually very disappointed in many ways by the EC revival. And I think it's a miss. I'll explain why. I love the covers. The covers are great. So the covers are really great. But I hate the titles. Like, why didn't they just keep the original EC titles, like Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, all those kind of things? Like, keep the classic titles. It would have been really cool. I mean, they kept the sort of same, layout of the cover. I thought, that's nice. The masthead is the same. They got the same EC logo, which is cool. And even the covers kind of have a slight element of pre-code horror look to them. But I just wish they had kept the titles. That's the first disappointment for me. Inside, they're the same as the EC books from the Golden Age, where they are anthology books. They have like various stories. The artwork will be very different from one story to the next because they have different artists working on each story. Sometimes the artwork is really good, and sometimes the artwork is questionable. Another thing that they don't seem to do properly is have like the Crypt Keeper and all the kind of like narrators. There is a narrator for the stories, but not the traditional one where it's the Crypt Keeper. I'm the Crypt Keeper. Blah blah blah. Here's the story. It's it's a narrator, but not that necessarily obvious that it is the Crypt Keeper or whatever. The other thing is the stories are not bad, but not quite the same level as they were in the Golden Age. Some of the Golden Age hooks and twists are much better. I find it's sort of a more miss than hit for me. I read this one. It was okay. I would say, I give it a B. Again, I'm more disappointed by the lack of the titles, lack of some of those classic pre-code horror elements. They try to make it a bit more gory than the way it would have been done in the Golden Age, but that it's not about the gore for me. It's never been about the gore. It's more about the way the story is told and stuff like that. That I think that can really make it interesting. So it's a bit of a hit or miss for me, more miss than hit. Okay, last question comes from Son of Crom. Why is it that the ferret, is more desired than Protectors #1, Newsstand, which has the first appearance of the ferret in it? Okay, so the whole ferret thing is a joke. Just so you know, it is a joke. There's a bunch of us that have been sort of, trying to make the ferret into something that it isn't. It's a dollar bin book. Protectors #1 is a dollar bin book as well. So both his first appearance and his first title are both dollar bin books. So they are not more desired or anything. But most of the people within this joke thing where we're just sort of trying to promote the ferret, we went for ferret #1 just as a joke because it's so hokey, it's so 90s typical situation that it's sort of it's just a joke that we're promoting. It's a thing. But it might be something which might be fun to join in on. I actually have Protectors #1 in my my cart right now. I'm gonna check it out later once Black Friday hits. And yeah. But it's not a super valuable book, and it will probably never be a super valuable book because they were just massively printed. It was from Malibu Comics. They probably printed these books in the millions. So really the potential for them to go up in value is really not there. Sadly so. Okay, and the last question, also from Son of Crom, comes from is about, is your buying group picking up collections, or will they buy just a small handful of comics? So the group of buyers that I'm working with, they're looking for cool books. At the end of the day, that's what they really want. It's really about buying cool books. So if it's a big collection, they'll buy it. If it's a small collection, they'll buy it. So it's really, if you have like even one book that's a cool book, they'll probably buy it. I made an announcement like last weekend about the fact that I'm working with a group of buyers that said I could offer maybe 6 digits up to 7 digits, maybe, to buy serious collections from the Golden Age, maybe into the silver, maybe slightly into bronze if they're major books. And they're interested in buying awesome collections. These are people that are basically the same as me, my clones. they're people who want to find the coolest books and put them into their collections. So yeah, it's basically a buying community where they really want to find these cool collections, and they want to use this channel, my channel, to be a source to find a lot of these Golden Age books. Like what I said earlier about Golden Age when I was talking about the market, like sometimes you don't see books for 10 years. And really, you literally don't see them for 10 years. And if my channel can help them get books quicker instead of having to wait 10 years, well, they're all for it. So that's where this money comes from, that there is that demand that they have to find cool books. And on the flip side, for people that want to sell their collections, well, I hope to help them get the best dollar for their collections. So there's a bit of, benefit on both sides is the cool thing. You're dealing with somebody who either wants to put it into my own personal collection. Some of the buyers are me. I'm going to be one of the buyers in it. I want to find cool books and put them in my collection, put them on my wall, basically. So there's a bit of that. So it's really, we're just trying to find cool books. Help us find cool books, and that'll be interesting. So that's it. That was the last question. I hope you enjoyed this video. There was actually one more question I missed. I know that there was one more question. And it comes from Matt. Actually, one more question. Sorry, I almost wrapped it up when I shouldn't have. There was one more question from Matt, and I didn't write it down. I just remember it. I didn't write it down because my printer ran out of ink. So I had to write all the questions down. But there was one more question. Okay, it was from Matt Likes Comics. He was asking about books that feature kind of like the teenage hijinks or teenage comedy books and series that I liked. Well, I'm going to show a bunch of books for that very thing, and I will show it. I got a big stack right here. So if you made it to the end of the video, like where it looked like I was going to end it, well, you're going to get some bonus here. So this is a pretty cool stuff that I'm going to show. So everybody knows Archie. Archie is like, probably one of the more famous titles ever for comics. And there are other titles that were very similar to Archie, and they were pretty cool. I'm going to show you one called Wilbur, which actually was before Archie. And this is actually the first appearance of Katie Keene. But these books are actually very underrated, very undervalued. Wilbur is much more affordable title than Archie. But it's got the same teenage hijinks, kind of teenage silly stories. They're actually quite fun. So Wilbur is one of those titles that you really should check out. Another one that I really like is Ginger. And Ginger is just this cute redhead. Again, same idea. Teenage hijinks. And just, she's kind of a fun character. So this is Ginger, number 9. Ginger only ran 10 issues. I'll just show you quickly all my Gingers. This is another Ginger. Ginger number 5. And then we got Ginger number 2. And it's like the typical thing. You can see all the guys are like, chasing after the girls and stuff like that. It's just, teenage fun. These were also produced through Archie. Now, a series that I really like that was not produced through Archie And if you watch last week's book club that I do on the Biggie Shack channel, I talked about a book called Junior, and actually it's right up there. You can see it, the red book right there. That was a book that we did a book review of. It actually did fairly well. It's, you know, it's about the art more than it is about the story. And the stories weren't bad, but it was done by Al Felstein, and I'm going to show you a few more juniors. I just really love the artwork. It's good girl art. Some of the issues have a lot of lingerie and bathroom scenes where they're getting half naked, and they're fun. They're fun books. Very more spicy versions of Archie. So this is Junior. And I'll show you a few of the covers. Really great covers. Really awesome ones. Like, look at this one. As my friend Stephen would say, her legs akimbo. Just a really great Al Felstein cover. And the artwork inside was as good as the covers. Just really consistently cool stuff. One thing I noticed, and it was actually my friend D that noticed this, D-Runk, was that sometimes Al Felstein would cut corners and be a little bit lazy about some of the panels. But for the most part, it was fun, very good art inside. So this is Junior. And then another title that was also part of that same kind of series was Sunny. So you got another fun title. I'll just show you a few more since I brought them all out. Another Junior. You can see it's like, you know, it's like her sweater is kind of very static cling, and her dress seems to kind of go up a little bit too high, you know, depending on the situation. And that was very, very common in these books. A lot of good girl, bit of sexy stuff going on. And one more Junior to show you is this one. I have the complete collections of both Junior and Sunny. Not that many issues in the whole thing. I think of like maybe 15 issues in the total collection. So yeah, so Junior and Sunny, definitely ones I really enjoy. I hope you enjoyed those books. A little bit of a bonus at the end. If you have a question you want answered, please put it in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer it. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.